begin this morning with some serious news. 4 members of a Florida family brutally murdered last Thanksgiving. 12 months later, what appeared to be an open and shut case has now turned into a painful wait for justice. Here's NBC's Kerry Sanders.
Thanksgiving a year ago.
Now emergency, keep it away from us. I should have to come. What's going on there, ma'am? My neighbors, oh, I'm so nervous. My neighbors next door, somebody has a gun.
Jim Sitton tells 911 among the 4 people just executed, his 6-year-old daughter, Michaela.
He shot multiple people. I saw the blood.
And in the background, you can hear Muriel, Michaela's mother.
My daughter was murdered. My mom was murdered. My 2 cousins were murdered.
Today, Muriel and her husband Jim say they're baffled by the legal system. A 6-week nationwide manhunt led police to Paul Marriage in a hideout in the Florida Keys.
I just can't believe I've done all this.
And later, again in a recorded jailhouse phone call, Marriage confessed.
It was me. It was me. It was nobody else. It was me. It's my fault.
But even with the confession and eyewitnesses, Marriage has entered a not guilty plea. A trial date is still not set.
It's ridiculous that in a case like this that's so open and shut, evidence-wise, that it takes years.
Marriage had been a last-minute added guest to the family's Thanksgiving dinner. Inexplicably, after they shared the meal, the witnesses say he pulled 2 pistols and started shooting, gunning down his twin sisters, his aunt, and his 6-year-old niece, Michaela. She had just gone to bed.
Was she asleep? Or you'd like to believe that she was asleep? No, she wasn't asleep. I heard her gasp. I heard her say, she went, and then pow, pow.
Walking into her room is a real comfort to me.
Today, her bedroom is as it was. Their only daughter with all her energy and tenderness, replaced by a haunting silence.
Used to, all of my nightmares were when I was asleep, and now they're all after I wake up.
In their home, where the calendar remains unturned and Michaela's clothes still hang in the closet, Michaela's creative short life is now touching others.
Mother, may I please make a bear castle? A bear castle? Says Mother. What are you talking about?
Muriel routinely recorded her daughter, and on those audio tapes, an impromptu story of a bear who befriends a unicorn.
He saw the cutest little unicorn sitting right there.
In her death, that story, The Bear's Castle, is now a book illustrated by a woman who lost her own daughter.
People say, oh, you'll get over it with time. You don't get over it, you learn how to cover it.
But what the book has done is give Muriel and Jim a way to share their daughter. The money it earns pays for disadvantaged children to participate in what Michaela so enjoyed, dance and music classes.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, ready, go. To think that children are enjoying something that was so precious to her, to share a story. And I just know that that's Michaela's heart.
For today, Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Jupiter, Florida.
And Dan Abrams is NBC's chief legal analyst. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Amy.
This is just such an awful story. And for the victims who are still alive, who were there that day, you can understand their frustration. They have eyewitnesses. We have a confession in this case, and yet a year later, no depositions have even been taken. Is that unusual?
Yeah, premeditation, et cetera. I mean, look, the fact that no trial date has been set at this point, a little unusual, but in death penalty cases, things take longer. The bottom line is you need to have the right defense attorney who knows how to handle a death penalty case. You need to have a judge who's handled death penalty cases. That's one of the issues here. So anytime a death is on the table, basically the system implements additional checks. that says we want to make sure that this is done right. If they were just pursuing the possibility of life in prison, I think that this case would be moving forward very quickly. That's not to say to justify it. That's just to explain why it is where we are.
And in this case, public defenders are expected to put up an insanity defense. Does that also further complicate this?
I think that further delays it, meaning the family's right in saying that comparatively this is an open and shut case when you talk about all the evidence that we discussed. The problem is that when it comes to who did it, these psychological defenses tend to be open and shut. The person is basically saying, yes, I did it, but here's my explanation. And going through the process of interviewing the defendant, interviewing people who knew him, getting other psychologists to interview the person for the other side, etc., can be a very, very time-consuming process and an incredibly frustrating one for those on the other side. But let's remember, he's behind bars right now. This is not someone who's walking free pending trial. He's behind bars. He's not going anywhere. So I think that there are other cases we've seen sometimes when victims' family members are extremely frustrated because someone's out, let's say, pending appeal, et cetera.
Right. And you mentioned premeditation, and it's interesting given the fact that we believe an insanity defense may be put forth. If you look at what Paul Michael Marriage did before these murders, it's pretty striking. He bought guns. He withdrew thousands of dollars from his bank account. He bought a cover to hide his car. I would think that would make an insanity defense extremely difficult.
Yeah, insanity defenses are always extremely difficult. The question here is going to be, did he understand right from wrong? And it's interesting, when you listen to the words he's using in talking to family members, he's now saying that he can't understand what he did. And I think that is really the beginnings of an insanity defense, basically saying, I couldn't have understood what I was doing. I couldn't have understood right from wrong, and that includes what led up to it. Now, you're right, that makes it even harder. It makes it harder to say that you didn't understand that what you were doing was wrong when you were out taking money out, knowing you were going to have to run away, buying guns, etc. That makes the already difficult insanity defense almost that much more difficult.
And how long could we expect a process like this to take before a trial date?
You know, there's no firm amount of time, and I think that's what's incredibly frustrating to the family members here, and I can understand their frustration. I would expect that in the months to come, they would set a trial date. But the problem in this case has apparently been finding the right judge, but they need, I think that the fact
because judges need special training to hear these types of cases.
Exactly. But look, I think the fact that the public is watching is going to begin to move this process forward. I think that the fact that the family members are making it very clear that they're frustrated, the public pressure, I think will lead to a trial date in the relatively near future, but I don't think this is going to get resolved for at least a year.
All right, Dan Abrams, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And by the way, you can learn more about Michaela's book, A Bear Castle, on our website, todayshow.com. We want to switch gears now, get a check of the weather and the weather.
Check 1, 2, check 1.
Stephanie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Amy, and we want to talk about this weekend forecast. And the good news is our front here along the I-95 corridor is going to be pulling out. But look at that cool air. It's going to get all the way down into the deep south. As we head into our Sunday forecast, we look back west for our next system to start to take shape and bring snow